Welcome to Just Break Up, the podcast about love, heartbreak, and all the relationship advice you don't want to hear. My name is Sierra DeMulder.
And I'm Sam Blackwell. And today we're going to answer a letter from somebody who is building towards physical intimacy. But before we begin, we just want to give you our Surgeon General's warning, which is that we are not licensed mental health or sex therapists.
Sam and I are not professionals. We are not trained in any of this. We are just two people with microphones and lots of opinions. So please take our advice as you see fit. We are only here to offer our humble musings to hopefully shed some understanding and maybe some laughs about the incredibly rewarding but mostly confusing experience that is love.
All right. We are going to get right into our letter today. Our letter comes from All Good But the Goods, whose pronouns are she, her, who's writing from Lost in Intimicity. And it's like it's cute, right?
Love it.
So she writes, dating someone for 5 months and it feels like it could be the real deal. 32 female and 36 male. He makes me feel supported, similar values and interests, easy to talk long-term and see a future, great friends, and easy integrating into each other's life. All good, except one thing. We've hardly had sex, only a small handful of times in the beginning. I think it might be a combo of performance issues in the beginning that added pressure and was a little awkward when it did happen. The logistics of not many sleepovers / lots of friend activities were both super social, and I love how much we prioritize work well in groups of our friends. And a dog that's up in our biz if there's even a hint of a makeout happening on the couch, let alone more, and very whiny when locked out of the room. My dog, though, and I am very happy to lock her out, but he seems to feel really bad about it. Anyway, all this led to it almost never happening and just kind of being an ignored part of our relationship now. He's very affectionate otherwise, so I don't totally feel like I'm missing the physical. I care about sex and relationships, specifically long-term. I just don't weigh it quite as heavily and would hate for this to get in the way of such a satisfying relationship partnership in every other category. A few of my friends think that I'm way too generous, saying if it's bad now, it can never be good. But I don't think that's totally it. I'm not sure why the lack of intimacy isn't totally bothering me, but I can't let it go on like this forever. And I do think if we can get past the initial hump, LOL, really, no pun intended, then maybe we'd be good in the future to keep working on it and improving it. I honestly think we both got to a place where it just felt awkward and uncomfortable and nervous initiating because it's been so long. And I'm definitely putting in a little more effort to initiate something physical with my kissing and touch, but not so much more. I'm probably feeling a little rejected at this point with it all. He seems way more okay just sweeping it under the rug. It definitely feels like there is just so much more pressure and can't be natural in making a move at this point. I did bring this up finally approximately 2 weeks ago after a few drinks, saying that I wanted to be more intimate and bluntly naked together more often. We both acknowledged it, which felt like a huge relief, saying that this wasn't normal for either of our past relationships and we want to work on it. I sent a quick text the next day just to validate that convo since we had been drinking, and he agreed again. But then, nada, no changes, and have been at least one opportunity or two for more. So 2 things, maybe 3. Any advice on how to create a situation or gentle phrasing that's more natural to get things going without it feeling like a whole ordeal and immediately adding pressure? I honestly think 60% of this is the dog, which I'm trying to figure out how to make situations where we're alone, but he always likes her to come over too, which is sweet. And he doesn't like to come over to my place where it's a little easier to control it or close her out. So this part of the problem I may just have to keep working on. Or do I just need to be brave and communicate, even though I did feel like I did that, dang it? If so, how do I bring this up again? It feels so hard to talk about, especially since I think my guess is that it's mostly performance issues and maybe him being a little embarrassed or avoiding it out of pride. And my maybe third question, when should this be a deal breaker? Ugh. Thanks so much in advance.
All right, my darling. Thank you so much for writing and trusting us with this letter. This is so incredibly relatable. And it to me, this is about sex and intimacy. And it's also about what feels like a established pattern in a relationship that feels hard to break, the discomfort of being like, oh no, well, it's been like this for a while, or like now that we've gone without intimacy for so long, it feels even more awkward to go back to it, so it's like, it's about the intimacy piece, and it's also about how time and patterns tend to make things feel more rigid and more uncomfortable when we try to change them or approach them. And I want to say, hey, oh my God, congrats. Way to go. Way to bring it up. Like, way to voice this already. It sounded like you guys had a great conversation. And that is so wonderful. Step one of, guess what? Like 200 more steps. Sorry. And I don't mean that in like a negative way. Just like we always have to have ongoing conversations about our relationships, about our needs, about our wants. And they're always going to be a mildly uphill, annoying at best, uncomfortable at worst conversation. So way to go.
It's forever work, as you might think about it, right? It's not a one and done combo. It's a commitment to continue to doing this over and over again.
Get it? Sex joke. All right. So we are going to offer you some advice, maybe a couple new perspectives about new ways to approach this in your relationship, because it's yours and not your friends. But first, we're going to take a very quick break.
All right, everyone, welcome back. So before we dig into this, I think, as I like to do, I want to start with like the macro before we move into the actual advice for you, which I think it's really important for us to sort of call out the idea that everyone has a different approach to how sex works.
Do you have a book for us, Sam? Or
shut up. You're just trying to get me to get an additional tally on my list. But I'm going to talk about it anyway. So even for folks who are not asexual, cannot recommend enough the book Ace by Angela Chen, because it really helped me approach how sex happens differently, because we have this expectation that like relationships should be full of sex, that sex should be easy, that sex should be as kinky as possible, that sex should be as exciting as possible. And guess what? Not everyone wants that. Not everyone's good at that. Not everyone has that expectation of their relationships. But we sort of sit in this place where we're assuming that there's a right or best way for sex to be part of the relationship, that it should be a really important thing, that it should be happening frequently, like all of this stuff. And that's not true of lots of different relationships. So I want to give you all permission to say, sex isn't that important to me, or sex is going to look different than what people may say it should look like, or it's okay that we're not having sex because we're doing all of these other really great things that are showing me that our relationship is meaningful, that I'm feeling loved or appreciated in. And I think that, and I don't want to like poo-poo on your friends, but I do want to say that like the way that they're talking about this, again, is part of a broader cultural expectation around how sex should work in our relationships. And like, no fault to them. I totally get it. But I want to give you permission to push back and say like, it doesn't have to look like that. It's not a deal breaker for me that we're not having sex in a meaningful way yet. It could be not a deal breaker for you to not have sex at all in your relationship.
Right.
It doesn't have to be a deal breaker for you to have sex outside of your relationship, right? Like there's so many different ways that our relationships can show up, and so many different preferences that we might have in terms of how we want to have sex with the people that are in our lives. And we again, just like shoehorn ourselves into this tiny box that somehow we like look at this and say like, oh, this can't be healthy. This can't be healthy. And I want to tell you that like healthy relationships can exist without sex in them. Healthy relationships can exist with sex that only happens once every 6 months, right? Like these are places, or these are really healthy ways to approach it. And the question that we have for ourselves, or that we need to have for ourselves, is, what are my needs around sex? What are my expectations for my partner? And can I voice those? Can I vocalize those in a way that helps get us towards a shared understanding of what role sex is going to have in our relationships? And guess what? You're starting on that path, which is super exciting. You are moving in that direction, which is awesome.
Yeah. And, if this is not abundantly clear, you don't have to have a one size fits all relationship to sex for your relationships. You don't have to have a one size fits this relationship for the rest of time. You know, like, so if right now you feel really good growing this relationship, you know, having sex once a month or whatever it is, you know, that is okay. And then you can continue to explore it. I totally agree with everything Sam said, and I thought you said it very eloquently.
Thank you.
I think that there's like this cultural obsession with sex, and I've totally done this. I've totally fallen into this language. I know we've done it on the show. And we're always told that we want more, that we should want more, that we should be having sex in a certain way, or else we're not happy, we're not satisfied, we are not liberated or whatever. But I know better now, and so we can do better. I want to talk about like breaking that cycle, like how it feels like, oh my God, we've been doing this for 5 months now. It's like a little too awkward. And we've got this combination of things that are preventing us. And now it's a big deal if we do it, right? Now it's a big deal if we become intimate instead of like a playful exploration that it would be at the beginning. I want to dethrone that a little. Sam said like 4 years ago on this show, awkward isn't real. Awkward isn't real. And, you know, that was like an ideology that he brought into his life to sort of like dethrone those uncomfortable conversations or uncomfortable situations that he would find himself in. And you would sort of realize, like, if I pretend that it's not real, I can get through it or
yeah, I can actually like say the thing that I need to say, or like,
yeah, totally.
Or like release myself of like the discomfort of being like, oh, that was such an uncomfortable conversation.
Yes.
Being like, yeah, sure, it was uncomfortable, but like awkward
it's not real.
Isn't real. It's not a thing.
Yeah.
We get to decide what awkward is. And I've decided that thing that just happened was not awkward.
Or from my interpretation, everything is awkward and we pretend that things aren't. Also, do you know what I mean?
Yes, absolutely.
Not awkward is not real. Even, you know, when people look perfectly polished or have, you know, like a perfect social vibe, they go home and they're like, oh my God, did I talk too much or was I too loud? You know? Okay, so what I want to talk about, a little tangent there, but what I want to talk about is how you're going to move forward in growing this intimacy while sort of breaking into the discomfort of this habit that you come into, this lack of intimacy because of whatever circumstances. And I want to offer the idea that I think intimacy grows in discomfort. We societally, culturally, I think we think of like intimacy as like not easy, but like sexy connection, feeling close, feeling loved, feeling touched, feeling beautiful and seen someone else in their beauty. You know, like we think about intimacy almost like unfortunately related to like romance and passion, when like it's very intimate to watch another person be in uncomfortable feelings. It's very intimate to sit naked next to each other and not do anything and not know what to do and not know what to say, but to really practice at what does it feel like to be uncomfortable with one another. Not that your relationship should inherently be uncomfortable, but not awkward is not real. A relationship with no discomfort is not real. And intimacy grows as that discomfort is familiarized, as that discomfort is flexed like a muscle. And so I just want to say, like, keep at it, you know, keep taking down the barriers, whether it be physical or emotional or physical, that are preventing you from exploring this valid side of your relationship, even if that means regularly trying different things with the dog or specifically saying, I want to try to have sex tonight, or practicing just showering together. What does it look like to shower, to wash each other, to give each other the massages or whatever? No pressure beyond that, you know, sitting naked and talking about sex, sitting naked and talking about intimacy that isn't sexual or isn't penetrative. I think I relate so strongly with the idea that like, oh my God, well, we're 5 months in and now it's awkward. Now, you know, we've been doing this for 5 months and now it feels like, oh, we can't undo this. But from the other side of things, it's only 5 months. It hasn't been a year. It hasn't been 5 years. It hasn't been a decade of a relationship in which your patterns are so concretely established. And guess what? Even then, you can still change your behavior. You can still right your path or change the course of your relationship. We are always capable of change. And you are especially capable of change personally and in this relationship. 5 months in, you are just starting. You know, this is the tipping point. This is the magic place.
For sure. Absolutely. And I also think that we think about sex as being like all or nothing, right? Like it's like we need to be having a particular type of sex. Yes, absolutely. Right. P and V sex. And it has to look this way and if not, then it is bad, right? Which can be so terrifying when we're trying to build intimacy that may feel kind of uncomfortable for us, right? And if there's performance issues too, right? Well, and then it's like, oh, well, you're bad at sex. That may not actually be the true thing here, right? And we don't need to sort of get to a particular type of sex immediately. It's not an on and off switch where it's like either we're having this type of sex or we're not, and this is good and this is bad. So I think that there's also an opportunity. Of course, you need to continue talking about this. But how can you talk about what are the on-ramps to the type of sex that you want to be having and build towards it, as opposed to just like saying the switch should be flipped on and we should be able to have this type of sex with each other? What does it look like to say like, well, what are we comfortable with now that can help us get more comfortable with each other in a more physically intimate space? So Sierra's example of like showering together, that's great. Maybe it's even like, I want to leave the dog at home just so that we're able to like make out on the couch while we're watching a movie without having to worry about the dog, right? Like I just want to be able to like mac on you a little bit. We don't have to, it doesn't have to lead to sex, but I just want to do it. Or what does it look like to say, ooh, can we commit to giving each other back massages today, right? Like when that, I'll bring over some massage oil and we'll just commit to doing that, right? But it's about the specter of sex can feel so intimidating. But how can we break it down into more manageable attempts to build our comfort with each other when it comes to physical intimacy? And maybe we never get to the type of sex that we imagine sex is.
Yes.
But the practice of building more physical comfort, more intimacy with each other might end up being enough. You know what I mean? Like it might end up being like, we rarely have the type of sex that people expect us to be having because of the society that we live in. But guess what? We have a lot of places where we show each other physical intimacy, where we have pleasure with each other or without each other, but in ways that are both fulfilling for us, right? Like, and so I think, again, it's like, we don't have to have a conversation about like, can we get to sex as fast as possible?
Right.
But can the conversation instead be like, here's what I'm kind of interested in right now. What would it look like if we did something that feels a little bit out of our comfort zone, but enough in our comfort zone that it feels manageable to us, that we can do it in a way that feels like intimate. And who knows, it could lead to something that's much more intimate, like something like 70% of cuddling or something leads to sex, which is like terrifying when you think about it.
Love that response from you.
But it's okay to use building blocks to get something somewhere, and it's okay if those building blocks lead to a castle that doesn't look like what everyone thinks that their castle should look like, right? But it's still a beautiful, wonderful castle.
Yeah, intimacy castle. Everybody's got a different intimacy castle.
Everyone has a different intimacy castle. That is very true.
Yeah. All right, my darling, we hope that this helps. If I can give you one piece of tangible advice, leave the dog at home.
Yeah, leave the dog at home. That's the first step.
Just carve out the space so that this could be possible if it felt consensual and like something you wanted to do.
For sure.
And also, good job. Keep it up. Lean in and stay curious. I'm curious about what your boyfriend's relationship to intimacy is.
For sure.
I know that's really particularly difficult for men to talk about because of our societal pressure on masculinity and sex and violence and horniness and whatever. So stay curious, stay open to his experience, and who knows, maybe he'll want to read Ace by Angela Chen too.
Read it together. Have a little book club.
Hot. All right, my darling, thank you so much for writing. We hope this helps.
Absolutely. We love you. All right, everyone. It is Friday, which leads us to our blind date segment. This is when we try and set you up with something that we think that you are really going to like. This week, we want to send you home with.
All right. I'm breaking my somewhat rule and talking about a parenting thing, which I do like 5 times a year. It is called... It's a book by like a parenting Instagram account that's very popular right now called Busy Toddler. And the book is called Busy Toddler's Guide to Actual Parenting. And it's by this woman named Susie Allison. And listen, when I was pregnant, I started following all this fucking super popular parenting accounts, trying to figure out how to make my baby sleep, how to make my baby eat, how to make my baby fucking be a baby. And I realized that a lot of parenting stuff out there is really anxiety inducing and focuses on talking about how hard and stressful parenting is. And it is hard and stressful. And I've been finding that I want to balance between like commiserating on how difficult it is and also like enjoying it. There's joy here, there's joy here. Anyway, that's like my own personal thing, but I really like Busy Toddler, the Instagram account. And this book I actually bought because I wanted to support her work. She is a former elementary school teacher. And so she created this online platform about all these activities, primarily sensory activities that kids can do so that they can entertain themselves while you basically watch them.
Shower.
Yeah, watch them entertain themselves. Or like,
yeah.
She has a funny name for it that I can't think of where it's like, where you're like parenting, but by like sitting back and just like watching them do their own thing. And, so it's a lot of like activities with sensory boxes that are not made out of like, Etsy things that you have to buy. It's like a bin that you put ice cubes in and then you give them a ladle. And they have to take out all the ice cubes on the lawn, so it's like a lot of
preparing them to do chores for you, which is really nice too.
Yes. I like the way
ice out, Cinderella.
Yeah, exactly. Labor for me, child. It's in alignment with how I'm stylistically trying to raise my child, which is creatively and independently and compassionately. I like the way it's written. It's really easy to read. It's designed for parents to just like either sit down and read or flip through. And I like Susie's personality the most out of all of the fucking parenting personalities that are on the Instagram right now. So it's called The Busy Toddler's Guide to Actual Parenting is the book, and the account is Busy Toddler.
I love it. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. If you are interested in more content from us, or if you're interested in getting your episodes without ads, you can always support us on Patreon. If you support us on Patreon for as little as $5 a month, you'll get an additional bonus weekly episode. That's patreon.com/justbreakuppod.
You can slide into our DMs, send us your favorite relationship memes, but most importantly, you can submit your questions about all matters of the heart at justbreakuppod.com, which is also where you can get our merchandise.
Please remember to like, follow, subscribe, give us a 5-star rating and review. This literally keeps our mics on and helps us reach more brokenhearted souls who need 2 random strangers giving them relationship advice.
Just Break Up is a production of Duvid Media, original music, recording, editing, producing all magical things by our good friend Spencer Worth Davis. Make sure to check out his podcast and his music. And remember, there is no normal sexuality and there is no normal approach to intimacy in relationships and partnerships. Every body is different. Every physical body is different. The way we choose to approach and exchange pleasure is different. And we get to be the deciders of how these show up in our lives. We can always create our own plan, our own path, our own form of comfort. And if all else fails,
just break up.